which is going to hopefully be a very fast-paced hour and a half of learning by doing. We're going to be doing quite a few breakouts throughout the hour and a half, so it is going to feel quite fast-paced. But the great thing is that we're recording at the back, so if there's anything that feels like you've missed or anything like that, I'm sure that film will be available, and I'll be sending out slides and things at the end. So, who am I? I'm Linda. I work in Supply Chain Blueprint team, and over the last 18 months I've run a lot of workshops in Central Europe on how to improve your processes in supply chain. Other few things about me: I really like colour, which is going to become quite evident as we go through this slide pack, I think. And I used to do some amateur theatre, so that's another little thing about me. You're about to do something to learn a little bit about each other. So, first, before we do go any further, let's just talk about what we're here to do. So, first thing we're going to do is learn the 4 key contributions to running a great workshop. And we'll talk through what they are and how you can use them. Then we're going to experience some of the different ways of running a great workshop. And then hopefully we'll be gathering a few hints and tips as we go along from each other about making workshops easier and fun to do and a bit less scary than sometimes they feel to run. But before we go any further, we're going to talk about this. This is on your handout. You've got 2 pieces of paper. Your handout is just a small piece of paper that has this on it. And what it has is the 2 sections that really make up a great workshop. The first is maintaining the energy. That's really important in a workshop. If people lose energy, they lose focus. And the second one is all about making it worthwhile. So when you come away from a workshop, feeling like you haven't wasted the day, 3 days, hour and a half, whatever it is that you've got. Within maintaining the energy, there's 2 things. The first is facilitation. So how you're going to run your individual parts of your workshop. How you as a presenter in that workshop should run it. And the second one is the activities you're going to do. We've all heard of a breakout. It kind of feels like there's only about 2 or 3 different types of breakout. I reckon there's 7 at least, and we're going to go through those today. And then making it worthwhile is all about the planning, and then it's all about the materials. So the planning reduces the stress, and the materials will help you to manage your outcomes. And we'll go through that as we go through this hour and a half. First things first, it's all about people bingo and warming up in this very cold room. So if everyone could get on their feet, everyone grab a pen. I've got a stationary person in each group. Everyone's starting to chat and met a few people that they don't know. That's fantastic. So, right, what we're going to do now is move into facilitation and talk a little bit about that. So, there's 3 things within facilitation that I want you to think about. Your language and your style, and then how that sets the energy. Think about the first 10 minutes you're in a room of a workshop. If I'd stood behind here, if I'd spoken kind of softly and then started, so we've all been to some terrible workshops in that time, haven't we? Oh, I'm going to be awful. Tell me some negative things about some workshops that you've been to. That would have had a completely different energy to coming in immediately and talking positively about running workshops. We've been sharing some stories about some of the challenges we have with workshops, but we've been talking about some of the good things as well. And that language can really set the tone of your meeting. If you want to have a low energy, more negative toned workshop, then your language will set. Hi, come in. Grab a handout at the back, and then come and join one of the groups. Thanks very much. The more positive you are, the more engaging it can be. So, I mean, I read once that you, the way that you talk, if you can find something to agree with everyone in the room, immediately that you walk into the room, everyone's suddenly in the mindset of wanting to agree with you and wanting to take away what it is that you've talked about. And that could be as simple as, God, isn't it cold in here? It can really make a difference to that trust relationship you're building with the room. So your language is really important, and you have to think about it as you go through your entire workshop. And then the second part is your style. So some people really love getting up on the front of in front of an audience and talking in front of a large group of people, and that's where they feel most comfortable. Other people really like to sit in smaller groups and have just conversations and just drop in questions in order to facilitate discussion. They're the facilitators of this world. The people that like to stand at the front are the lecturers of this world. And in the middle, somewhere in between, is the trainer. And where you are along that scale will set the style that you use throughout your workshop. But the key with this one is that there's probably a pretty good place to be on this in a workshop, and that's halfway between facilitator and trainer. So you don't want to be all facilitator, because sometimes you need to get some content across. But equally, you don't want to be all lecturer, because sitting for an hour and a half and listening to me yabber on about workshops for an hour and a half, probably going to lose some energy at some point during that time frame. So your style sets the mood of the meeting, and those two things together will determine the energy in the room at any one time. So I'd like you to pair up with the person next to you, or in threes, and have a quick chat about three things. The first one is, what do you enjoy and what scares you about running a workshop? And having had that conversation, that will kind of give you an idea of where you feel most comfortable on the scale. Are you at the lecturer end or at the facilitator end? Because if standing up in front of the audience doesn't scare you, then you're probably on the lecturer end. And then talk about what are the advantages and disadvantages of each position along that scale. I've kind of given you a few pointers on that one, but if you have a chat with the person next to you, got 10 minutes to have that conversation, off you go. We all talk about breakouts as if they're, this amazing thing that we do, and we're going to break out, and it's going to be brilliant, and then we're going to learn something, and then we're going to come back together, and we're all going to feel like better human beings because of it. But actually, breakouts can go very badly wrong very quickly if they aren't well managed. Breakouts are there to help people learn. That's the main thing that you want to get out of breakout, exploring an idea. So the absolute key thing is to be clear on your intended outcomes from your workshop. If you go into a workshop, think about some of the workshops you've been to, where it's very clear, it's either up on a poster, or it's up on the PowerPoint, or people have got cards and they know exactly what it is, the question they're going to answer, then you'll get a much more successful breakout and a much more successful discussion at the end of it than what I've seen happen quite often, which is we'll go, right, I want you all to break out now, and I want you to answer this question. And the facilitator will speak, and you'll be looking at who you're going to be partnering with, making eye contact, going, yeah, I think you'll be good, and not listening at all to the question that they were actually trying to get you to answer. And then you go out and you sit down and you go, so, what is it we're meant to be talking about? And you can't remember, because the facilitator hasn't done a great job of letting you know what outcomes it is that you want. So something that came out of the discussion we had on Friday when I did this workshop over in New Tesco House, is that if you give people an idea of the questions you're going to ask at the end of the workshop, at the end of the breakout, then you're probably going to have a more successful breakout. As I was just mentioning at the end of the facilitation section, keeping everyone engaged by mixing it up. There are a huge number of different breakouts. As I said, I think there's probably 7 that are worth knowing about. Those have different levels of energy. There's some really high energy, there's some really low energy. And mixing it up keeps people's brains engaged. And that's really important. So if you're doing all super high energy breakouts, everyone's going to be really into it and then get really tired and lethargic. And by the end of the session, be that an hour, be that 2 days, you're really struggling to get people to do your high energy workout. And it also, people start to get a bit bored of doing high energy stuff at some point. You need to mix it up, high energy and low energy. And be flexible, adapt. If like, the worst thing's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just after everyone's come back from lunch. you do a workshop that just doesn't get the mood of the room, and you're doing a breakout, sorry, that doesn't get the mood of the room, everyone's a bit lethargic at that time, so you need to sort of inject some energy, but whilst realising that everyone's digesting and is therefore probably going to not be focused so much on the content that you're giving. So, I just mentioned that I think there's 7 different activities or breakouts. I've given them all slightly comedic names for my own personal fun, really. So we've got the All Together. We've done one of those today. That was when we just had a bit of a chat about the conversations that you guys had, and we all had a bit of a conversation as a whole room. The Deep and Meaningful, that's the other one you've done today. You grabbed somebody else and you've talked about something that's really quite personal. What's your personal style? It's quite a deep and meaningful thing to talk about.
So you're going to send these out?
Yes, yeah. We're also going to talk about them in a lot more depth in the next couple of minutes, so hopefully you'll get quite a lot from that. Then there's the thing I call the flip brackets chart, which is all about using flip charts and standing around a flip chart. Now it's a very interesting dynamic to think about when you're using a flip chart, and when to use it and when not to use it. The Post-it notes are a fantastic thing. So it's how using those as your centre of your breakout and what that might look like. That is a very different energy to your flip chart, and a very different energy again to your Deep and Meaningful. Then there's the game, where we actually play a game. For example, if you're doing a workshop on lean manufacturing processes, and you get people to make something, that's it's a game. And the roundtable discussion. That's the standard breakout sort of one. You sit around a table and you discuss something. And then there's the walk and talk, which is my personal favourite, where you go for a walk, you go out of the ring, and you break out and you walk as you talk. And that has a very different dynamic to the Deep and Meaningful. So what we're going to do is gather into sort of 7 groups, and you're each going to take one of these. So this group can take the All Together. This group here, you can take the Deep and Meaningful. You 4 at the end there, you can take the flip, sort of the middle group 4 here. If you could take the Post-it, and then you guys in the corner, you take the game. Then, I'm running out of groups, aren't I? Yeah, if you guys take the round table, and then actually if I split you 4 and you 3 sorry, I'll make this clearer. This is a how not to run a workshop moment. I knew there would be one. So, you guys know what you're doing, you guys know what you're doing, you guys, you're okay? So if you 3 in them, sorry. It worked, it definitely worked when all the chairs were in the position that they were when we came in. So if you 4 come together and do the Post-it, yeah? And then you 5 come together to do the game. They're still running out. So then 3 and 3, you could do the round table and the walk and talk. Does that make sense? Everyone know what they're doing? What are your advantages and disadvantages?
If everybody's all listening at the same time and there's no downtime having to relay the separate conversations, separate inputs afterwards, you hear it firsthand, there's no misinterpretation. There's the opportunity to get more points across.
Yeah, interesting. Talk to me a bit more about that one.
Actually, I think that might be a downside. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll move on.
I think more people with more diverse opinions into the discussion.
Yeah.
And it allows you to then actually start to think of different trains of thought.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I
I mean, quite often listening to a big room of people talking, you'll think, oh goodness, yeah, that's really good, and you'll start writing. And then it's always a really good feeling when you see that as a facilitator. Yes, people are taking something away. That's
I
really
think
good.
that actually was, I've got a tip against it, but I think it was a downside of if you've got a big room, there's less opportunity to get your word in.
Yeah.
So if you have smaller groups, you're more able to get your points across.
And then you've always got a few people in the room who are really quite happy to talk.
Yeah.
as a wider group, and you tend to hear a bit more from those than you do from the others. So as a facilitator, you then have to sort of do the whole silence and eye contact thing of like grabbing someone that hasn't really said too much, giving them some really good eye contact. What do you think? And then silence until an answer comes back, which is an evil thing to do. But if you're struggling to get interaction from your audience, silence is your biggest advantage on that one.
You get a mix of opinions. You're not single tracked. I think that can work both ways because it's very easy, even in a big group, to get single tracked by something that one person is saying, particularly if they're a lecturer.
Yes.
Yeah, that was our benefits.
Brilliant. And your pitfalls, you've kind of covered some of them.
It's difficult to get points across in a large group. It's hard to get consensus with a wider audience. The stronger personalities dominate. Some people just don't feel confident saying anything, even if they're given the opportunity with silence.
Yeah.
If it's a large group, whereas around a small table they might. It's harder to keep people on track and facilitate it with a big group.
Yeah, so on that facilitating a big group thing, the all together, you can end up in some quite sticky circumstances because you're all together. The interaction tends to be directed at you, the facilitator. So you're talking to me, even though you're talking to the whole room right now. Now imagine you've got two people with two very different opinions going back and forth. They're going back and forth vying you. And that can be quite an intimidating situation to find yourself in. So what do you think that might mean for the sort of topic you want to avoid when you're doing it all together? Any thoughts?
You don't mind if it's too contentious.
Yeah, exactly. You would generally want to go with things that people are generally going to agree on.
It's hard to get a word in for people that aren't confident or don't have the right personality, don't have a personality that allows them to speak up. And also, this is a practical thing. If you're all in the same room, if you're all together, you lose the opportunity to create energy by picking yourself and moving yourself somewhere else.
Absolutely. That's really helpful, thank you. So what was your topical question it would work well for? One-liner, did you get that? No? Any thoughts on what might be a one topic that might work for this? Any thoughts? Okay. So topic it would work really well for is
it's just it needs to be something that's not going to be cause conflict because you're going to be there all day and not mention a specific topic. You need to be kind of realistic and use common sense, don't you? If you have a group of that many people, that you're not going to be there all day to kind of point it on.
Absolutely. And so a topic it wouldn't work well for is something to do with politics, as an example. Yeah? Cool. So, thank you very much for that, guys. That was really good. Thank you. So, the Deep and Meaningful team. You guys? What were your advantages that you talked about and disadvantages?
I suppose it can be seen as slightly more informal and it gives more people the opportunity to talk. You will probably glean something from the individuals that perhaps you wouldn't have in the all together. So it's almost working sort of the disadvantages of the all together. You may also really feel people's emotions, giving them the opportunity to tell you really what's on their mind, what's a root cause of something.
It's quite personal, it's more detailed, it's quite focused.
Yeah. Okay, so what would be pitfalls of that? That was quite a lot of good advantages.
It might not drive a decision. And plus, if you are in a small splinter group, as it were, you may be off the actual topic, you may interpret a question in your own way.
Get biases swayed by the other person's opinion. Yeah, because of that emotional elements to it. Yeah, then you go off topic.
Yeah, very I always find it's quite good to talk about active listening beforehand. Has anyone heard of active listening? A few people look like they might have heard of it. What it is the combination of two things. The first is making sure that each person has their say by when the other person is speaking, you stay quiet. So you don't say anything. But as you're listening to them, you don't just give them like no facial expressions. You nod and you sort of give non-verbal sort of tips that you are actually listening. And then when it comes to a point that that feels comfortable, you then repeat back what you think you've heard. So this is what I think you've just told me. And that really helps you to cement the thoughts that have been talked about in that deep and meaningful. And it also makes sure that each person has an equal say and has a chance, so that you avoid things like the conflict, things that are really personal. So, did you guys have a think about any topics or questions it would work well for?
People on an emotional journey. So, for example, if individuals are going through a change, and you might talk about the change, but then like actually talk about how they're really feeling and how it affects them.
Perfect. And a topic it wouldn't work well for?
Trying to get ideas of the bigger picture. That two people lead service out. In the detail and bigger picture, using maybe them all together or another method.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers. So, the flip at the back. What were the advantages and disadvantages you guys thought of?
You can capture detail. You're writing it down. It's very visual. So if you take that as an example. And also, if you, as preparation beforehand, write down, for example, expectations or what we learnt today, or somebody gives you some sort of structure up front. What are the advantages?
And just extend that, it just ensures that he agrees with what's being recorded as opposed to a laptop screen just doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the whole kind of group can see it. Disadvantages are more about this one person you alluded to with the pen. They may have rubbish handwriting.
It's a big problem if they do as a facilitator. You're like,
and if they don't necessarily agree with what someone has said, they may not write down exactly what that person has said, and they may write down what they would rather write down.
It's also like a lack of interaction. It's only one-way traffic between the scribe and the person who's speaking. So in terms of generating ideas, it won't be very productive in that sort of sense. That's being conclusive.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just a bit IT speak, but I'm not IT, but I describe it as a bit of a serial process versus if you look at one of the other ones, it's a parallel process, there's lots of interactions. This is very much just a one-way flow at any particular time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the tips we were talking about when I kind of wandered over there was if you're going to have a flip chart, a lot of it's about controlling the outcome of that breakout by having pre-written up a template on that flip chart to help people, so that you definitely get the outcome that you want, and you also stop the person with the pen having all the control about how that outcome comes through. And generally speaking, the person that goes for the pen is generally also the person that's going to be most vocal in the room as well. It just tends to be the way it goes, the extroverts in the room. So, topic it would work well for?
Capturing expectations or next time, say like, I've never actually run a workshop, but say, if the first day, it might be more beneficial than saying the third or fourth day of the workshop.
Yeah.
Like the intros.
Brilliant. And I think we've kind of talked about some of the things it won't work so well for, where it's you really want two-way traffic and not a steering. Fantastic. So, the post-it, similar but not the same as the flip. What were your advantages and disadvantages?
So with the post-its, it gives everyone in the room an opportunity to have their say and be anonymous. It doesn't discriminate against ideas, so there's no one person saying it's a crap idea and putting on the flip chart. It can also act as almost like a voting system for ideas capture. Where do you think we've got our biggest opportunity? Right, then, the post-it note, bring it all together, sort of group them so you can see key themes.
You said about grouping, wasn't it? You can actually keep on mashing it down until you find what you kind of you get a proper idea, focus idea of what the problem is in that,
Yeah.
And then it can lead into a group discussion about the different groups and the different ideas that have been sort of generated on each individual poster.
Yes, it's quite good for planning in that way, isn't it? You know, particularly if you've got a really big wall that you can use, you can start to map out things and, you know, make decisions, and it's a real collaborative process of going, I see why you've put it there, but actually, can I put it here? And do you see why? And it can work really well from that perspective.
You can do timelines as well.
Yeah.
You can sort of just chop and change this. If this thing happens first, well, hang on, no, it doesn't. You can chop them all.
Yeah, exactly. And you sort of look at it, and you can step back and take the big picture, and then go back into the detail again. It's great for that. Okay,
And as Stephen said, it's exactly the opposite of the flip chart. It's parallel rather than linear or serial.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Great. And so, what were the pitfalls? It sounds fantastic.
You've got to get the group size right. So too few people and it becomes less anonymous. You don't get as many ideas, but too big, and you get a hell of a lot of stuff, and it can be quite difficult to sort of sit through and organise. And then you get into rooms and disagreeing about where the post-it should go and all that sort of stuff.
You need the space to work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think there's also going to be some topics specifically that it really doesn't work for. Did you guys come up with any specific topic?
Or we sort of more generically said it's going to work well on an open question, a broader subject rather than a narrow subject. We didn't come up with specific.
Closed questions, we said it wasn't.
Yeah.
Looking for open, closed answers. It's not really. You know, if you've got open questions and that sort of thing, it's a great way of getting those ideas coming through. But if you're looking for a yes or no, and you're looking for, it's probably not a good route for that.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, really. Unless you do it on a voting system, which you can do that anyway, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks very much, guys. It's a really good summary. So, the game. Who had the game?
Brilliant.
Brilliant. So, what were your advantages and your disadvantages of the game?
Most of them were advantages, really. I mean, it's fun, it's interactive, it's a great way to get everybody involved, unless you happen to have people who don't like playing games. Maybe that's downside.
That's really important, actually. If you get a group of people that are not into game playing, your game's going to not work. And so actually knowing it's real key that you know your audience and you're flexible with it as well. But there's lots of different types of games. So for example, if you've got a room full of art students, then doing a role play is probably going to go down quite well. If you've got a room full of computer programmers, role playing might not go down so well. I'm not making any judgments or stereotypes, but you have to think about your audience.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
And saying Alex on Lean Six Sigma
Yeah, so
training as
things
well.
like that, where you've got quite a complex thing, a message you want to get across, or a process, things like Lean Six Sigma, it works really well at trying to get that across and get the concept across.
Yeah, brilliant. And do you think that a game always has to be sort of a short breakout, or could the entire workshop be a game in some form?
But like in that example, it was actually a theme over a 3-day course. It was almost, there were a number of different games, so there was one game that ran the whole course of the workshop and training, and it worked really well.
Yeah, so what are the disadvantages of doing a game?
I think if you've got a mixed group and you've got some people very competitive, they tend to push to the front, and if you've got people quieter, they'll get pushed aside and probably not as participate as much.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's also really, really hard to plan a really good game. So you've got to have a lot of time to do your workshop if you're going to run a workshop with a game that's a complex one, like the 3-day ones. Because otherwise it's not going to work.
Probably certain subjects are inappropriate for that as well. So if it's quite negative or something like that, but you're there to kind of maybe restructure a company or something like that. Maybe that was it.
I can't imagine that any situation where that would be a good idea. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Cool. So the round table. Are you going to have the round table?
Yes.
So what were your advantages and disadvantages?
We decided that, well, there's around 8 people for a round table discussion. The advantages are that it's an environment that most people will be familiar with, so probably at ease. It would be really out of the norm for people to sit around in the meeting rooms. That's what we do day in, day out, so hopefully conversation and views will be put across in that way that everybody's listening and accept those views.
I think while that's an advantage, it also can be a disadvantage because of the fact that it's just so common for us. It's the way we traditionally do things isn't necessarily particularly memorable as well, being in that format. I still think there's an element of, if you're in a group of 8, there'll be some individuals who will be less confident in speaking up, and that allows some individuals to take control because of product dominance unless they recognise that or are able to bring that individual into the conversation. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic recruitment game, isn't it? Where you do a roundtable discussion and then you sort of see who brings in the people and who's dominating the discussion and things like that. I mean, if you've ever done an assessment centre or watched an assessment centre, you can see all of these behaviours happening as you do it. And so as the facilitator, you've got to keep an eye on all of those groups to see, right, is there anyone that's not really saying anything? Is there anything that I can do to go and make sure that those conversations are going on? But if you've got like sort of 7 groups all doing that at the same time, that's quite a challenge and it's quite a difficult thing. Are there any other disadvantages that you were talking about?
Depends how you run it, I guess, but you probably visually see less of the output of what's going on. You sort of see maybe the development of ideas because it's more conversational. You might have supporting tools like slides, etc. But whereas if you compare it to the flip or the post-it, you start to see the ideas coming together, don't you? So it's more kind of just conversational, I guess.
Yeah, so what's a good topic for that then?
Very structured. Although, I think, I'm just trying to think, specific problems, where you probably quite easily build a consensus with a small number of people.
Yeah, and then the things that you're probably not going to talk about as a group of 8, or not necessarily 8, it could be
something where there's a lot of technical expertise or something that you really need to have the knowledge on isn't quite so useful.
Yeah.
You don't have the person that knows about whatever specific aspect you need to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. What about something that's really like a really personal topic? So if you've got a really personal topic, generally speaking, we've been talking about using deep and meaningful for those sorts of very in-depth personal topics. But again, this is about knowing your audience. So one thing that you can use a group discussion, if you've been with the same group of people for 3 days and you have built up that trust in those groups, in those teams, and actually talking about a personal topic could be something that would really work on a round table, and actually you get much more. So you suddenly you lose the disadvantages of only having the 2 people in the conversation that you have with the deep and meaningful, and you gain the advantages of more opinions. But it's definitely not something you can do if it's like an hour and a half's workshop and people haven't really got a chance to build those trust relationships with each other. So it's always worth thinking about.
I think one of the challenges with all of these, apart from the altogether for me, is that at Tesco, getting commitment from everybody to come to the workshop, getting everybody in the same room, because quite often they're on different sites in different countries, and getting them to stay in the workshop for the whole time, because they've got other meetings in their diaries, is really difficult.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges is if you split off, how much time is that going to take? How much time are you wasting having that all together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk about a little bit about that in the planning and materials side of the workshop, which we'll crack on with in a second. But the 2 tips are, firstly, it's how you PR it from the start. So thinking about how you're going to get people to come along and really want to come along is all about, it's marketing, it's PR. There was a specific reason that the way that we wrote the note to invite people to come here, and then sent out another note with slightly different text and slightly different conversation to make sure people came today and really wanted to come. That was entirely intentional. So PRing is really, really important. Getting commitment as you go through the day, I think that's a lot about building the trust and the relationship as you go through. So taking it really seriously that you need to go and interact with every single individual as much as you possibly can throughout that day, so that they feel they've got a personal relationship with you, so that leaving feels like something they
So this
shouldn't
is my
do.
point, is that I would never be able to get all of my stakeholders in a room for a day.
Right,
So games and post-its and stuff can be really challenging because I've generally only got them for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Okay. I know there's a couple of other people that have a similar sort of issue like that. What we'll do is we'll just grab each other just at the end, anyone that's got that as a specific issue, because generally speaking, workshops, you can bring everyone into the room together.
Yeah.
But if you can't, we'll talk about that at the end and some tips for that. Is that okay?
That's great.
Brilliant, thanks. Cool, so we had one last one, which was the walk and talk, which is these guys around here. So, what are your advantages and disadvantages of the walk and talk?
Starting with a disadvantage, I think you can't really bring anything back. So, it's been a while since we did it, and maybe we've forgotten a few of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a really good way of sort of maybe going into a personal topic you'd like to leave the meeting for, but sort of with activity and you're bringing a bit of energy back into it, and without so much sort of eye contact, I think it's good to go if you don't really know the people.
Yeah.
You can sort of get into personal stuff without it being quite so like face-to-face and intimidating.
Yeah, it's quite a relaxed and formal environment. We've got the trust and attention on the circle in the canteen. It was just quite a relaxed.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit of crossover with the deep meaning though. It's not so deep, but I think it works well in small group, 2, 3 maximum, or any more than that. It's difficult to walk and kind of talk across 3, 4 people. I mean, advantages, I got to see what I wanted for lunch as well.
Brilliant. Yes.
But, I mean, joking aside, then there is distraction as well. You might walk and be distracted by other things that people you know, and things are going on, and then you kind of forget what you're actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great if you're somewhere like the Academy at Theobald's, because you've got those beautiful gardens to walk through.
When I did a course a while ago, we did a between talk in the gardens, and that worked really well.
Yeah.
There's not much distraction, and it's kind of quite refreshing.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's very refreshing, and it really does. But yeah, you're actually right. You can't bring everything back. It's really difficult, and and you will tend to kind of go off topic if you're walking. So just because you'll feel much more like a chat. But I have seen it work really well as a one-to-one. If you ever feel like you've just been in the office all day, and in your team you're going to have a one-to-one with one of the guys in your team, and you just think, you know what, we need to get out of here. I mean, I'm not saying that Delamere Road or Mundell's Park is a particularly nice place to walk around, but getting out of the office and having those conversations, particularly if you need to have a feedback session or something like that, it can really reduce the sort of intensity of that which you would get from a deep and meaningful. It's sort of akin to how people sit round in a meeting room if you're sat next to each other versus sat opposite each other. That gives a totally different dynamic to the room. Very, very interesting. Body language comes into so much of this, it really does. Cool. Okay, thanks very much, guys. I will write up all of that and send it out to everyone, so you will get the outcomes from that. So we're running a little short on time, so we're going to now go through the cool. So now we're going to talk about planning. So we're not going to spend too long on this because we're all pretty good at planning at Tesco. This is something we're quite good at. But what I want to talk to you about in workshops is that it's all about reducing your stress levels. The more organised you are, the less stressed you will be. It's a very good idea to trial anything new. So if you're going to do a new type of breakout, particularly the game, that is really, really important to trial anything new. And then the next part is to really have a flow to what you're talking